Hello and welcome to this part 16 of my series on building my own magic set. And this time I'm going to go through all the blue rares and mythics that I didn't go through in part 14, which covered the cycles, which were the first three rares and the first mythic here. So, as I mentioned in the previous, in part 15, I didn't follow any kind of skeleton here anymore. Instead, I tried to find themes that often occur in blue rares and mythics, and then use those. But also some tribal stuff, which is, works in this specific setting. Yeah, but let's get into it. So my first one is Either Eyes Instant 3U, and it's a reprint. I think it's originally from the second Ravnica block. I'm pretty sure it is. And it was reprinted as an uncommon in one of the master sets. I don't remember which one, but some master set. So what it does is it returns all attacking creatures to their owner's hand. And yeah, it was printed as an uncommon in some master set, but instead I wanted to push it into being rare because it is kind of a feel bad card. I think it's fine to have in the environment because it might lead into some interesting situations where you have to think about whether you want to play into Either Eyes or not. And at that, okay, so if that's what I want, it should actually be an uncommon, because at rare you don't think about it because you think, oh, it's a rare, so I'm never gonna see it. But on the other hand, uncommons appear roughly twice as many times as rares. So in that sense, difference isn't that huge. Anyway, also I'm a big fan of this card in certain formats, multiplayer formats, where the people I play with should always be aware that I will put this in all my blue decks. Then Circumvent, instant 1 you do, and you may pay an additional 2 when casting the spell. So it's counter target spell, survival X, where X is the spell's mana value. Is that spell's mana value if you paid the additional cost. So it's, your basic cancel with upside, something you can find in most sets. Like, what's it called? Was Away in Crimson Vow, and that would have the optional cost of you, in which case it would only counter something that wasn't cast from a hand, and then there's your basic what's it called, dismiss and dissolve, stuff like that. Add that extra scry or add that extra surveil or surveil 1 or whatever. And also wanted to make sure that this is not strictly better than the uncommon counter spell that has surveil in it, whatever its name is. Sinister Sabotage. Then Leatherback Mirage. I found Leatherback. It doesn't sound very blue, so maybe I should change that. But it was a synonym for turtle, according to Thesaurus. I was using, so I went with that. But anyway, it's a turtle illusion. 3 UU for 6 defender. At the end of your turn, target creature an opponent controls attacks during its controller's next turn if able. So it keeps forcing things to attack into it. I'm not sure the defender is necessary. You could put something like, if it attacked last turn, it doesn't, during your last turn, it doesn't untap, like, or something like that. Just, to make it slow. But on the other hand, it probably doesn't matter because you want to keep it back because you want to have your opponent's creatures run into it. So I think this is, in that sense, fine. Then Mercurial Visionary, human wizard, 2 and a U, 2/2 prowess. And whenever you surveil an instant or sorcery into your graveyard, you can cast that spell. So yeah, you have to still pay the mana for it. But yeah. So a bit like, flashback for a flashback for something that you just just put into your graveyard. Although it won't be exiled, it will just go back to your graveyard after you cast it. But I don't know, felt like an interesting thing. Like, you get this random card advantage. Very hard to predict, and also since it's blue, it's going to have the problem that it will often just the spells you put into your graveyard will often be counter spells or things like Etherize, so you don't necessarily get to even cast it. Although you can cast Etherize whenever you want. If I remember correctly, you can cast it whenever you want, but it just won't obviously do anything if there's no attacking creatures. Yeah, I think it's potentially quite powerful. Might see play in some formats where you would have, like, I don't know, like, it's a good pairing for the I've forgotten that spell's name. The thing that's quite commonly played in both modern and historic, the 1 red mana 1/1 which has surveil and becomes a 3/3 with flying and must attack if you have delirium. I really should remember what it's called because I played quite a bit in historic. I haven't played modern in a couple of years, but anyway. So so that's Mercurial Visionary, and sort of counterpart for that is Wayward Visionary. Maga Wizard, 3 and a U, 2/4. Whenever you surveil, return all creatures with mana value less than equal to the number of cards surveilled into the graveyard this turn to the owner's hands. I think I should add return all other creatures. This does have some complication in it to it. You have to keep in mind how many cards you surveilled the graveyard this turn, especially if this enters after you've already surveilled something into the graveyard. So your opponents might not have been paying attention. So in that sense, you have to be kind of like, this could cause problems in tournaments, disagreements. But yeah, so the idea here is, or the inspiration here is, why can't I remember this name? One of my favorite cards from it's from the target block. It's a 4-mana 3/3 blue creature which has the exploit ability, and when you exploit, it looks at I think the power of the exploited creature, and then it returns all creatures your opponents control with power less than that of the exploited creature. And I really like that card. I really like that design. I actually played it in Constructed in a TP. And well, some of the people, we had, I think, 4 people playing that deck. And I think, like, well, one of us did, a couple of us did very well, a couple of us didn't do well at all. I was in the not doing very well. I think I went 6-3 or something, which wasn't enough at that time. You had to go 7-2. No. Actually, I did go 7-2. I just did horribly badly in the day 2. Yeah. Anyway, I always liked that design. It had like that specific format was one where that was the that's a format where there was this combo deck based on this white card, which would return a bunch of creatures from the graveyard to the battlefield, and then sack those again. They would be returned to the graveyard. They would be exiled at the end of turn, but you could sack them for various value. Like Nantuko Husk would sack them to become bigger, and you could sack them for some exploit things, and you could sack them for so various cry effects or stuff like that. So, but the deck would often have a bunch of creatures on the table. So you wanted to get rid of those. So this was our answer to that. And the poor thing that would often get exploited would be Gideon, because Gideon, I think it's Gideon ally of Zendikar, which would turn into a 5/5, and then would get sacked to that creature. But anyway, that was an inspiration. I wanted something similar here, although this is much more difficult to actually employ. And again, like with many of these survey effects, it becomes quite difficult at times to say, like, what exactly should you be doing? You're often sacrificing something in order to you're often sacrificing something, like, well, you have to make quite difficult decisions. Do you actually want to bounce something, or do you want to keep that card on top of your library so that you can draw it next turn, and you will probably go into quite feel bad situations. But on the other hand, I do think that there should be this aspect to Magic. You should have to make difficult decisions at times, because that is part of game playing. Because if they're constantly holding your hand, we've seen that, because they've started to constantly hold people's hands, and they've taken away drawbacks from creatures and whatever. You've come to this place where the games are just less interesting, and they become very snowbally and whatever. Anyway, moving on. So, research leader. This needs a better name, like so many other things. Elemental wizards, 3U, 2/3, flying, and whenever you surveil all wizards. What have I been thinking? All wizards you control. Oops. I had 6/6/6 there for a second. Control gain +1/+1 until end of turn. There is somewhat of a elemental theme here, and somewhat of a wizard theme here. So I don't know. Just found this. Maybe this thing costs too much, but I'm fine with that. There was in Dominaria, there was the blue-red wizard that would give all wizards +1/+1 when you cast an instant or sorcery or non-creature spell. So yeah, and that was just 3 mana 2/2 flying haste. So maybe this costs too much, but on the other hand, I don't know. I think it's fine. More of a limited card than a constructed card. And then Acquisition Adept, Merfolk Rogue, 1 and U, 1/2, flying, and whenever you surveil, gain control of target non-creature artifact until end of turn. Untap it. Untap that artifact. This is inspired by Thieving Skydiver, I think it's the name, from the last Zendikar set, which was 1 and a U, 2/1 flying with kicker. Kicker X, well, X needed to be at least 1, and you could steal something, steal an artifact from the opponent with mana cost X or less, or X, I don't remember. Anyway, yeah, I think that's a good creature to have. I've been finding it an interesting card to play. I've been thinking about playing it in standard in certain ninja decks, although I haven't gone around to playing a ninja deck. But it feels like the kind of, and I haven't checked if people are actually doing this. I haven't seen a ninja deck in a long time. Anyway, I find it because there's now several artifact decks, or at least one like Rakdos artifact deck, and you could definitely benefit from being able to steal certain cards from your opponents, because these decks often have these 1/1 tokens and treasure tokens and blood tokens. So steal them. So, but anyway, I just thought that it was an interesting, interesting archetype. So I wanted to make something similar, but harder to control. Obviously, this means that you can also gain control of some quite important. And then moving on to the Mythics. So Sphinx of Existence, the Sphinx 5 UU 6/6 can be cast from exile. And what card name is exiled? Other cards can't leave exile. I think I'll just take that out. I think it's better this way. So as long as this thing is on the table, other cards can't leave exile. So like if something gets put into exile, like with Ephemerate or whatever, it doesn't come back, and you can't cast spells from exile, or if there's 2 of these things, like, well, you can cast it. No, you can't cast it, because if you cast something from exile, it will go to the stack, so you can't cast anything from exile. But anyway, well, a part of me thinks that this kind of hate might be needed, but if something that hates this probably shouldn't cost 7. But anyway, I just thought that give blue a good finisher, although it's a mythic, so getting it might be somewhat difficult. Then Residues of Time enchantment, 3 UU. Whenever you surveil, put a time counter on card name, and then sacrifice card name, remove 5 time counters from card name, and you get an extra turn. So it's like very difficult and slow time walk. I wasn't sure I wanted to put time walk here because they are just so bad for the game in general. But I thought that why not? At least your opponent will know, will have an idea when it's coming. because it's going to be on the table. Like you have to actually surveil 5 times. So it's not going to happen very fast. I also thought that maybe this should well, you could easily tune this in some ways. You could put an extra requirement that you have to actually surveil something into your graveyard for this to trigger and gain a counter, or maybe give it a little bit of a bonus, which would like fit the flavor that you get to shuffle some cards from your graveyard into your deck. But then again, there's Witness the Future, which already does that. So I don't think there's a second card that does that needed. Although Mythics again don't necessarily change that very much. But yeah, I think that's it for this episode part, whatever. And thanks for listening. And if you happen to be in the mood, do all the YouTube things, and I'll see when I can get to the black. Actually, looking at my calendar, I might just do it now. But yeah, I'll see.